My fork paused halfway to my mouth the second I heard it, Preston's laugh. That smug, drawling chuckle I'd recognize in a hurricane. And it wasn't coming from the entryway or from the guests settling into the dining room behind me. It was already close. Too close. From behind the staff door. I turned slightly, just enough to catch the blurred reflection in the brass wall sconce. Natalie, adjusting her lipstick, fixing a strand of hair. And Preston, leaning close, whispering something into her ear. She smirked, not laughed. Smirked, like she was enjoying a private joke. I clenched my jaw so hard my molars throbbed. I turned back to my plate. It was my birthday dinner. A custom chef's menu Preston insisted on organizing for me. A surprise event. Said it was time someone did something nice for the guy who always played the grown-up. Right. Preston had always been the charming screw-up. The kind of man who set fires, then smiled while you cleaned them up. And somehow, everyone let him. Parents, friends, women, even her, Natalie. We'd been married 8 years. No kids, by choice. She'd once told me I made her feel safe, grounded, focused. That being with me was like exhaling after holding her breath too long. But lately, that exhale had turned into distance. Cold silences. Disappearing weekends. New clothes I didn't recognize and perfume I never bought. When I asked if she was okay, she'd snap. Not everything's about you, Michael. God, be mature. That word. Mature. The dagger every last one of them loved to stab me with when they wanted me to shut up and accept being lied to. I started hearing things 6 months ago. Little throwaway lines. Natalie staying at a client's lake house the same weekend Preston posted an Instagram story tagged cabin life from our old family property upstate, the one he bought out from me years ago. Then there were the dinner party glances. The way my cousin Tasha looked at me when Natalie and Preston talked across the table like they were in their own world. Her husband elbowed her once, subtle, quick. She looked away. I pretended not to notice. I wasn't supposed to notice. But I did. And that's when the itch began. At first, I chalked it up to paranoia. Stress from work. Being in my late 30s and feeling life slip sideways while everyone else was out partying and investing in crypto scams. But paranoia doesn't hack into your wife's calendar. Paranoia doesn't pull GPS logs from shared rides. Paranoia doesn't set up hidden cameras in your own damn guest house because your brother borrows it for a weekend getaway and your wife claims she's got a conference in D.C. You know what does? Truth. I watched them together on a Tuesday. A grainy, infrared video that looked like something out of a war zone. And still, even with the poor lighting, the angle, the pixelation, I could tell it was her. Her laugh. Her posture. The way she reached for Preston's wrist and kissed that stupid scar he got playing polo in college. It was like watching someone desecrate a grave. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I watched the whole thing. Twice. And then I opened a spreadsheet. Just like I do at work when a system's failing, when a supplier's hiding losses, when a board member's hiding money. Because you see, what my darling wife and golden boy brother never understood was that boring Michael, the logistics guy, the tax nerd, the family planner, he sees everything. And he never forgets. I had copies of their fake nonprofit filings. Preston's shell company transfers. My uncle's fake loans. Natalie's sudden gifted stock options from a boutique firm my brother chaired. It wasn't just adultery, it was a damn crime ring. And they were all in on it. And they thought I wouldn't see it. That I'd just swallow my pride like I always did. Host family barbecues. Pay for grandpa's medication. Make the toast at weddings. Laugh it off when Preston made some dig about how I was the responsible one. I booked the restaurant. Not Preston. I sent the invites. Not Natalie. I chose the staff. Hired them myself. Through a third-party private security firm that partners with federal investigators. I wore my nicest suit. Navy blue. Tie with a subtle print. Shoes polished to glass. I smiled at every guest as they arrived. I played the part perfectly. Because I wasn't there to celebrate. I was there to finish what I started. And for them, all of them, it was going to be a feast to remember. And none of them knew. Not yet. They thought they were attending a birthday. They thought the man at the center of the room, the dependable older brother, the one who never raised his voice, who paid for Thanksgiving when Uncle Barry forgot his wallet again, who quietly signed checks when Grandma's dementia meds stopped being covered. They thought the guy was still asleep. But something had shifted behind my eyes. I could feel it. A new weight. Cold. Controlled. Like a steel cable winding tighter by the second. I saw them come in one by one. Tasha, pretending her dress still fit like it did 10 years ago. Her husband, Carl, already half-drunk and smirking at one of the servers. Aunt Vivian in fur she couldn't possibly afford on her nonprofit's budget. All of them with their perfectly powdered lies, clinking glasses, offering shallow congratulations, saying things like, "You deserve this, Mike," with the same tone you'd used to calm a growling dog. But the moment that carved something into my ribs was when Preston came over. He clapped me on the back like he'd built me from scratch. "You clean up nice, bro. How's it feel?" 39. I didn't flinch. I turned to him, glass of champagne in hand, and smiled. Like a countdown. He blinked, confused. That was my first gift to him, one single sentence he'd unravel in his head over and over until the day he dies. Natalie followed seconds later. And it hit me. She wasn't even pretending anymore. The way she leaned into him. The way she kissed his cheek before mine. I saw it. So did Carl. So did Vivian. I watched eyes shift, lips twitch, glances pass like coded telegrams. And not one of them said a word. Later, I slipped away to the coat room. Not to grab anything, but because I needed 30 seconds of silence to breathe. To remind myself not to start the fire too early. I stared at my reflection in the mirror. The same man I'd always been clean-shaven, composed, polite. And behind that, a stranger. One who'd learned to wear the mask longer than anyone else in that building. That's when I saw the text light up my burner phone. All confirmed. Staffer in place. 9:15 p.m. delivery. C. That C was short for Cynthia. A quiet, terrifying woman from federal investigations who could end entire families with one stapled folder. I'd met her through a cybersecurity job I consulted on 5 years ago. Back then, she told me, if you ever need someone disappeared, legally, give me a call. I never forgot that. Back in the dining room, they had started passing around birthday cards. Each one faker than the last. Preston's was a joke about being an old man. Natalie's was short, generic, her handwriting looking almost robotic. No one noticed when I picked up my glass and tapped it 3 times. Tink, tink, tink. The room hushed. I stood, straightened my jacket, looked at every single person at that long oak table. "Thank you all," I began. "Truly, it means a lot to be surrounded by family on a night like this." Polite nods. Chuckles. A few people raised glasses preemptively. But tonight isn't just about me. There it was. The first flicker of confusion. Preston tilted his head. Natalie narrowed her eyes, lips parting slightly. I took a slow breath. Tonight is also about truth. Vivian's fork paused midair. Tasha shifted in her chair. One of the waiters moved toward the door, calm, smooth, professional. Like a stagehand waiting for cue. I've spent most of my life in the background, I continued, voice steady. Paying the bills, fixing the mistakes, nodding along when people lied to my face. Carl snorted. Loud enough that 3 people flinched. But recently, I said, letting my voice rise just slightly, I've been paying attention. Preston laughed. That dismissive, cocky bark. Dude, what are you on? Is this a roast? Natalie reached for his wrist, like she could shush him with a touch. But her eyes, those ice blue eyes, they knew. Not everything, but something. Something was off. I smiled. In a way, yes, I said. Because every single person in this room has been feeding me lies for over a year. And I'm done pretending I don't taste the poison. And right then, at that exact second, every server in the room stopped moving. Forks froze. Chairs creaked. The doors at both ends clicked shut. I raised my glass. To maturity, I said. And all around me, their faces began to crack. Part 3 will escalate this dinner into a reckoning they'll never forget. There was a moment, a sliver of time so sharp it could cut skin, when no one breathed. I watched their eyes dart, watched lips tremble, jaws clench, throats tighten. The illusion of warmth drained from the room like blood from a corpse. And still, I held my glass aloft, letting the silence stretch, letting them stew in it. To maturity, I repeated, slower this time. You all told me to be mature. When I asked why Natalie was always with Preston, be mature. When she missed our anniversary because of some work emergency upstate, be mature. When I found out half of you were investing in Preston's tax-free trust opportunity, without a single disclosure, what did I hear? I turned toward Tasha. Her face had gone pale, lips parted just slightly like she wanted to interrupt, but couldn't figure out how. You said, "Let it go, Mike. Don't cause drama. Family's family." I stepped away from my chair. The room felt like it was shrinking, the walls bending inward. Every step I took, I made sure my shoes tapped the floor just loud enough to be heard. I stopped beside Aunt Vivian. "Do you remember that dinner at the Fairmont?" I asked, soft as ash. "When you accidentally showed me that beach photo of Preston and Natalie on your phone, then spent the next 10 minutes telling me about how fit they both looked." She swallowed hard, didn't say a word. "I do." I turned back toward the head of the table. Preston was leaning back now, arms crossed, trying to wear that old invincible smirk, but it didn't quite land. Natalie sat next to him, perfectly still, hands folded in her lap. Her fingers twitched once. That was it. "I used to think," I said, louder now, addressing everyone, "that if I just worked hard enough, kept my head down, paid the bills, helped out, you'd all eventually treat me with a shred of honesty. But I was wrong." I walked toward the center of the room again. "You didn't want maturity from me. You wanted silence. You wanted obedience. You wanted me to be your fall guy, your cleanup crew, your human rug." I looked straight at Natalie. She didn't flinch, but I saw it, the faintest twitch at the corner of her eye. The same one she had whenever she lied about something small, like where she left her keys or why her phone was off for 6 hours. "I was so proud of you," I said to her. "I paid for your grad school. I let you quit your job and find yourself. I supported your art therapy thing even though it bled money like a stuck pig. I gave you freedom, space, and time, and you gave him your weekends." I pointed at Preston. He stood now, defensive. "All right, Mike, that's enough. You're embarrassing yourself." I laughed. God help me, I laughed. Loud from my gut. Because that right there, that line, was the same one he'd used when I caught him stealing from our parents' retirement fund 10 years ago. Same tone, same look. Like I was the one ruining the party. I haven't even started embarrassing myself. "Preston, you'd know if I had." I turned to the staff now, the servers standing like statues around the edges of the room. "Gentlemen," 4 of them stepped forward. Each one reached into their jacket and pulled out a black folder, bound with silver clasps. One placed a folder in front of Carl, another in front of Vivian, another to Tasha, one more to Natalie and Preston. "What the hell is this?" Carl barked, already flipping open the file. His face changed, drained. He looked like he'd been shot without hearing the bang. "That," I said, "is a complete breakdown of wire transfers you've made to an offshore account in Barbados under the name C. Franklin Limited. That company doesn't exist. Never did. But the IRS thinks it's fascinating." Carl shoved the file away like it had burned him. This is forged. What is this?" I turned to Preston and Natalie. "Yours is longer. 36 pages. Detailed correspondence. Encrypted chats. Anonymous property transfers. Natalie's fake employee ID for that real estate shell in Vancouver. Preston's fun little hobby of running wellness retreats that launder money through PayPal. All of it. Right there." Natalie stared at the folder. Didn't touch it. Preston grabbed it. Flipped it open. His eyes scanned, his breathing sharpened. By page 3, the color had vanished from his face. I kept going. "Aunt Vivian, yours includes falsified expense reports from the foundation. You know, the one you claim feeds inner-city children but actually paid for your Bora Bora trip. Tasha, yours covers 3 separate insider trading tips, all traced back to texts sent from your husband's burner, logged and recovered. Screenshots included. You're bluffing," Tasha said, her voice thin and trembling. I walked toward her, set another copy of the folder, thicker than hers, on the table. "I made backups," I said. "Multiple. Sent them to lawyers, investigators, journalists. But this isn't a press release. This is a warning, a final mercy." I paused, and then I said the words that dropped the hammer on the room. The real investigators arrive at 9:15. All heads whipped toward the antique grandfather clock in the corner. 9:12. Tick, tick, tick. The sound of that clock ticking landed like gunshots. I swear, I could hear hearts racing louder than the second hand. 9:12 and counting. Natalie didn't blink, didn't speak, just stared at the folder in front of her like it was loaded with explosives, and she wasn't wrong. Preston, meanwhile, kept flipping pages, mouth slightly open, his lips moving silently like he was reading prayers he didn't believe in anymore. Carl shot up from his chair, face flushed red with panic. This is blackmail. Are you hearing this? He's threatening us. This is illegal. I turned to him calmly. What you've done is illegal, Carl. What I'm doing is called reporting. There's a difference. And by the way, if anyone leaves before 9:15, that counts as obstruction. Ask your lawyer. Oh wait, I forgot. You already fired him last month after that little SSC inquiry, didn't you? Carl froze mid-step like someone had turned him into stone. That was the beauty of it. They'd underestimated me for so long, they'd practically handed me the tools to destroy them. Half of them had complained to me directly over the years, thinking I was too dull or too passive to remember. I had quotes, email threads, drunken rants at weddings. They had given me everything, and now I was giving it back gift-wrapped. You're bluffing, Preston finally said, slamming the folder shut. This is Photoshop. Some freelance hack job. You don't have the balls to pull this off. I met his eyes and tilted my head. Then why are your hands shaking? He looked down and quickly pulled them off the table. Natalie, still silent, finally spoke. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but cold enough to frost glass. Why? That was all she asked. Why what? I replied, almost gently. Why didn't you just confront me? She said. Why didn't you say something when you found out? This is theater. This is cruel. I smiled. And it was genuine. The first real smile I'd felt in months. Because you would have denied it. Lied. Like you always do. Like you've done for over a year. And not just to me. To my face. In my home. In our bed. With him. She flinched, but only a little. Just a breath. Just enough to confirm it all. I took a step closer. Letting my words come slow, deliberate. You didn't fall out of love with me, Natalie. You calculated your way out. You waited until I paid off your student loans. Until the cabin was officially in Preston's name. Until you found a way to funnel your shares of the company into that wellness scam Preston cooked up with his investor friends. You weren't trapped. You were waiting for the payout. The room was silent. Completely. Even the staff stood still, hands folded in front of them, stone-faced. Jesus Christ, Vivian muttered under her breath. I ignored her. I wasn't done. I was your safe harbor. The guy you came home to when the world got too hard. But when things got too easy, I became boring. Forgettable. Disposable. Natalie shook her head, eyes watering now, but no tears fell. Mike. I didn't mean for this to happen. There it was. The line. The one everyone uses when they've gutted you and want to pretend it was fate holding the knife. I stepped back, jaw clenched, pulse hammering in my ears. I loved you, I said, even when you didn't deserve it. Especially then. And that was my biggest mistake. Preston scoffed. God, you sound like some dramatic little. I spun on him, sudden and sharp. Shut up, Preston. He did. It was the first time in my entire life that sentence had actually worked. 9:14. 1 minute to go. You'll all be fine, eventually, I said, pacing slowly behind their chairs now. Preston's rich friends will bail him out again. Natalie will find some other idiot to pay her way through life. Carl? You'll probably flip on everyone here and serve 3 years, max. But one thing will follow each of you. I stopped walking, turned to face them all. Your last memory of boring Mike will be tonight. When he took off the mask and made you realize you'd been dancing on a cliff's edge and never saw the drop. Tick, tick, knock, knock, knock. The doors opened at exactly 9:15. And what stepped through? Not cake, not candles. 2 agents in dark suits. No nonsense. DOJ badges already visible. And they weren't alone. Clipboard in hand, following right behind, was Cynthia, calm, meticulous, terrifying Cynthia. She smiled at me. Nice party, she said. Best one I've ever had, I replied. Then I turned to face the table and said, they're all yours. It was like watching a fire crawl silently across a banquet table, igniting each name card in slow motion. Cynthia didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Carl Dawson, Vivian Rose, Tasha Green, Preston Hale, Natalie Hale, she said, each name like a verdict being read aloud. You are all listed in connection to an ongoing federal investigation into wire fraud, securities violations, charitable misappropriation, and tax evasion. Carl lurched to his feet like a man drowning in invisible water. I want a lawyer. Right now. Cynthia didn't even blink. Good. You'll need one. Two agents peeled off. Calm. Silent. They flanked Carl like museum guards escorting a drunk out of the Louvre. He shouted something. His voice cracked halfway through it, but no one responded. Tasha's husband slumped into his chair like his spine had been cut loose. Vivian sat frozen, mouth open, a single pearl earring clattering to the floor as she instinctively jerked her hand to her chest. I watched it roll under the table. No one moved to pick it up. Preston was still standing. Barely. Chest heaving, fists tight, mouth twisted into some kind of half-snarl, half-smirk. His default setting when reality caught up with him. You really did this, he muttered. You set us up. Your own family. Funny, I said. I thought you did that first. He pointed at the folder, waving it like a weapon. This is nothing. You think this sticks? I've got lawyers who eat this stuff for breakfast. I nodded. I'm sure you do. But this isn't about one lawsuit. Or one shady deal. It's about pattern, Preston. Repeated, calculated fraud over years. Cross-border accounts. Front companies. And do you know what's worse than a crook? He didn't answer. He couldn't. I leaned in, close enough for only him to hear. A sloppy crook. His mouth snapped shut. Then I turned to Natalie. She hadn't said a word since her quiet little why earlier. But now, finally, she stood. Slow, deliberate, eyes glassy but dry. Her face didn't show guilt. Or panic. Just rage. You think this makes you a hero? She hissed. You think this is justice? I didn't flinch. No. Justice would have been me walking away clean, with my time and love and loyalty returned. This is just the audit. Her eyes narrowed. You're pathetic. I used to be. The agents motioned for her to step back from the table. She did, but not before leaning in just far enough to spit out one last dagger. You always needed to feel important, Michael. Even if it meant setting fire to your whole damn family. What now? You gonna sit here and toast yourself while we get hauled away? I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said, no, I'm going to sit here, have my dessert, and watch everything you build on lies burn down quietly. She said nothing, just stared. But I saw it. Behind the fury, behind the perfect makeup and diamond earrings Preston probably paid for, there was fear. And behind that, something worse. Recognition. She knew I'd won. They began filing out one by one. Not in chains, not yet, but in shame. Quiet. Eyes down, faces white. Preston tried to speak again. Something bitter, something smug. But Cynthia shut him up with a glance so sharp it nearly drew blood. I watched the doors close behind them. Then I sat back down in my chair. The table was still full of food. Half-eaten appetizers. Untouched steaks. A row of wine glasses. One still trembling from where Carl had bumped it before getting dragged out. Across from me sat a single place untouched. It had Natalie's name on it. I reached forward, picked up her wine glass, swirled the dark red liquid once, and then drank it. Alone. No one else moved. No one clapped. No one offered congratulations. The remaining guests, those not involved, sat stunned, trapped in the echo of what had just happened. I let them sit in it. Let them feel it. Then I stood, pulled my jacket from the back of the chair, and turned to leave. But just before I reached the door, I stopped. Glanced back once. By the way, I said, voice calm. Happy birthday to me. And I left the room full of ghosts behind. The world outside that dining room was loud, New York loud, but it sounded like nothing after what I just walked out of. Horns, sirens, laughter spilling from sidewalk bars. People living their Friday night lives, oblivious to the nuclear detonation that had just taken place 3 floors above them. I stepped into the black sedan Cynthia had waiting. The driver nodded silently. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Cynthia slid in beside me a moment later, folders in hand, crisp as ever. I have to admit, she said, buckling in, you planned that better than half the agents I work with. I looked straight ahead. You ever spend years being treated like the boring one, Cynthia? She smirked. I am the boring one. Then you know, I said quietly. Boring people remember everything. The ride back to my condo was a blur of lights and glass. I barely spoke. Cynthia reviewed the plan for the morning, how the DOJ would release a sealed summary of charges by Monday, how press inquiries would be handled, how anonymous tips would be received and verified. Even though every detail had come from me in meticulous order, I just nodded. When I finally stepped out of the car, I didn't head straight inside. I walked 3 blocks to the Hudson, stood by the railing as wind tore at my coat, stared into black water, and let the night wash over me. I should have felt vindicated. I should have felt fire, or fury, or triumph. Instead, I felt nothing. Not the dead kind of nothing. Not the numb, collapsed kind of nothing. This was clean. I'd cut a tumor out of my life so precisely, so completely, that the bleeding hadn't even started yet. But it would. Because the part no one talks about when you burn down a house full of traitors is how quiet your life becomes once they're gone. I went home, showered, let the hot water carve lines down my back. My phone buzzed once. Unknown number. A single text. What happens next? No name. No punctuation. But I knew the voice behind it. Natalie. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the encrypted Vault app on my tablet, entered my code, scrolled through the folders, one for every name that had sat at that table, one for each of them. Evidence, screenshots, bank records, call logs, even audio from the wire I'd worn at that 4th of July retreat last year when Vivian bragged about shaving numbers on a veteran fund. Preston had laughed and said, they should be grateful we even look at them. It was all there, neatly cataloged, time-stamped, labeled. I closed the app, locked it, set the tablet on the nightstand. And that's when I saw it, the envelope. Cream-colored, no markings, just sitting there on the edge of my bed. For a moment, I stared at it like it might explode. I hadn't left it there. Hand steady, I opened it. Inside? A Polaroid, taken from inside the cabin upstate. My cabin. The window view. Same as the angle from the security footage I'd used. Only this shot. This wasn't from my camera. Natalie was in it, standing by the bed, and she was looking straight at the lens. On the back of the photo, in red ink. We always knew you were watching. That was the first time I felt it. That chill. That crack in the surface I thought I'd sealed. Because this wasn't over. Not yet. Someone else had been watching me, and they'd just sent their first move. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of the photo, not even because of what it implied. I didn't sleep because I couldn't tell where the game ended anymore, and whether I'd just become a piece on someone else's board. I stared at that Polaroid until the city began to lighten, until the horns below turned from party traffic to Monday morning chaos. I didn't move, didn't speak. I just kept turning the photo over in my hand, again and again, like it would eventually change. We always knew you were watching. It wasn't Natalie's handwriting. That much I was sure of. I knew every curl and slant of her script. She used to write notes on napkins when we were broke newlyweds, little poems and stupid jokes. And this was different. Tighter, sharper, intentional. This was someone else. And whoever they were, they'd been close enough to slip into my apartment. I did what I always do when the ground shifts. I went looking for data. I pulled the building's security footage. I knew the doorman, slipped him a bottle every Christmas. At 2:16 a.m., someone in a black ball cap and service jacket rode the elevator to my floor. No face, no name. But that uniform? It was from our contracted dry cleaning vendor, which had shut down 3 months ago. I checked the lock, no tampering, which meant one thing. They had a key. That shook me, not because I was in danger, but because someone had been planning this longer than I had. And suddenly, the whole victory felt smaller. Cynthia came by at noon. She noticed the change in me right away. You look like hell, she said. Not as bad as Preston, I replied automatically. But I wasn't in the mood for jabs. I handed her the photo. Her eyes flicked over it. One brow arched slightly. Where did you get this? My bedroom. She nodded slowly. When? Between the party and dawn. She studied the back, then the edges. You're being watched. I was being watched. I corrected. Now I'm being warned. She slid the photo into a folder, sealed it without a word. You think she planted it? I asked. Natalie. Cynthia shook her head. No. Too messy. And if she had, she'd have made sure you saw it sooner. She wants to be the victim now. This isn't her move. Then who? She didn't answer. But I saw the answer in her silence. Someone else had a stake in this. Someone deeper. The problem with taking down a web of lies is that sometimes the strands go farther than you knew. And when you cut the thread, something pulls back. That night, I called in a favor. One of the few I'd never planned to use. His name was Edgar. He used to track cartel movement across the southern border, but after a fallout with his agency, he'd gone private. He owed me for keeping his sister out of prison years ago. I told him I needed intel. Silent, off-grid, deep sweep surveillance analysis. He didn't even ask why. He just said, "I'll be in touch," and hung up. 2 hours later, he sent a single image to my encrypted line. A still frame, pulled from a camera I didn't know I had. It was my living room, 3 nights before the birthday. And in the center of the image, Natalie, standing alone, hands behind her back, looking up at my camera. Not the motion detector one-eyed installed facing the door. The pinhole one in the corner bookshelf, hidden inside a dummy copy of Moby Dick. And she smiled, not at the lens, at whoever was holding the phone. There was someone else in the room. I didn't know who. I didn't know why. But I knew, with absolute clarity, Natalie had never been the boss. She wasn't the queen. She wasn't even the player. She was a piece. And now I had no idea whose board we were all standing on. The air changed after that night. Not the kind you feel in the weather, the kind that settles in your chest. Cold. Metallic. I built my entire life around knowing where the threats were, anticipating outcomes, managing damage. But this wasn't damage control anymore. This was something hunting me back. Edgar sent me another file the next morning. No subject line. Just a name, Cambridge Group, 2012. I opened it, expecting another photo. Instead, it was a PDF, dozens of pages deep. Shell companies, offshore accounts, employee rosters. And buried on page 38, a list of investment facilitators from a now-defunct advisory firm linked to political lobbying, tech startups, and something called Emergent Therapeutics. Right there in the facilitator column, Preston Hale. But what chilled me wasn't his name. It was the one right beneath it, Natalie Cross. Her maiden name, dated years before we even met. She knew Preston before our random coffee shop meeting, before the art therapy school, before the first date I thought I initiated. It wasn't coincidence. It was engineering. And suddenly my entire marriage wasn't just betrayal, it was placement. I'd been the mark. The husband-shaped key to access family assets, legal protections, corporate shields. They'd embedded her into my life like a parasite. And I'd loved her. I'd loved a damn plant. I paced my apartment for an hour, trying to find the seams, trying to rewind all the fake moments I once thought were real. The night we slow danced on the fire escape. The way she cried when I proposed. The way she whispered, "I don't deserve you," after her mother's funeral. Had all of it been scripted? Or worse, recorded? I called Edgar. What the hell was Cambridge Group? I asked. They were ghost brokers. High-end asset launderers. Got dissolved during the Panama Papers fallout. But a few of their spin-offs still operate under different names. Your brother and wife were listed as handlers for a client portfolio that, let's just say, the feds never made public. Why not? He paused. Because the money trail goes through 5 senators, 2 retired generals, and a biotech company doing work the CDC still won't acknowledge. I didn't breathe. Emergent Therapeutics, I said quietly. Yeah. What did they do? You sure you want to know? I gritted my teeth. Tell me. Preliminary patents on human behavioral modulation. Nanotech. Synthetic neurochemistry. They called it compliance optimization. Targeted mind state influence via aerosolized proteins. I blinked. Are you telling me my wife was working for a mind control company? I'm telling you Preston was funneling money into research that got buried. And she helped cover the tracks. And me. You? You were the audit-proof backdoor. Clean, stable, family name. The Hale Network. You're the kind of guy they marry when they need legitimacy. I sat down. Hard. I had been nothing but leverage. Everything I thought I built with her, my life, my love, my marriage, had been a project. Edgar wasn't finished. Mike, there's something else. Of course there is, I muttered. Go on. We scanned facial recognition across all available camera footage in a 2-mile radius of your apartment the night the envelope was planted. Only one unknown figure matches across 3 separate angles. He sent the image. It was grainy, black and white, taken from a building cam on 72nd. The man was tall, shaved head, sharp jaw, dressed in a catering uniform. And though the image was blurry, there was something wrong about his face. Who is he? I asked. That's the thing, Edgar replied. He doesn't exist. No facial match, no prior record, no military, no employment. He's a ghost. I zoomed in, froze. The man was smiling, looking directly at the camera, like he knew it was there, like he wanted me to see him. Edgar added one more message. I think you triggered something bigger than you know. And I don't think this was ever about your wife. He was right. This wasn't about infidelity anymore. This was about infiltration. Natalie's betrayal? It was just the curtain rise. And behind it, something far darker had been waiting for me to lift the veil. I didn't leave my apartment for 72 hours. I barely ate, barely slept. I sat in front of a screen, cycling through everything. Bank records, security footage, voice memos, emails I thought I deleted years ago. Everything I'd once called my life now looked like a staged crime scene built just for me. Everywhere I turned, another thread unraveled. Natalie hadn't just married me for access. She hadn't just lied about Preston, or her career, or the coincidental way we met. She had built an entire persona out of tailored affection. She studied me, knew what music made me nostalgic, what books I underlined, the way I clenched my jaw when I was anxious. That wasn't intimacy. That was design. And now that design was cracking. I could see the shape of the real structure underneath. And it wasn't a marriage. It was a program. Edgar texted me on the 3rd day. No greeting. One of your files leaked. The Vancouver Trust. Somebody burned your decoy folder. I froze. Only 5 people had access to that file. Me, Cynthia, and 3 decoys, lawyers I'd never met face to face. It was a trap folder, filled with half-truths designed to track who would leak what, when. The Vancouver Trust wasn't real, but the metadata embedded in its documents told me exactly who'd opened it and when. I opened the log. Accessed, 2:03 a.m. Timestamp traced to Cynthia's secure node. My blood ran cold. I didn't want to believe it. I needed her to be clean. The one ally I hadn't second-guessed. The one who helped take down my family like it was just another operation. But now I saw it. She hadn't helped me. She'd used me to clean up a mess she couldn't touch without breaking her own cover. The federal charges? The dinner? All theater. I pulled the trigger, yes, but the gun was hers. I called Edgar immediately. She used me. Yeah, he said, but she probably thinks she owns you now. She doesn't. Then prove it. That night, I made a decision. I gathered every file, every timestamp, every keystroke. I built a new folder, one that didn't have decoys or traps. Just truth. Layered, cross-referenced, airtight truth. And I uploaded it. Not to the feds, not to the press, to every investor board and private regulatory committee tied to Emergent Therapeutics. All of them, simultaneously, with a single message attached. What happens in the dark only stays there if no one has a flashlight. Consider this yours. Then I vanished. I left my apartment, left my car, took nothing but a hard drive and a burner phone. I checked into a no-name motel in Jersey under a fake name, window facing a swamp, not the skyline. And I waited. 3 hours later, my phone rang. No number. I answered. A woman's voice. Cold. Familiar. Cynthia. You think you're clever, she said. No. I think I was stupid. You just made the mistake of thinking I'd stay that way. A pause. Just breathing on the other end. You have no idea what you've done, she said quietly. Oh, I do. I just stopped letting other people write the ending. Another pause. Then she said something I'll never forget. You think this story was ever about you? You were the pilot run, Michael. The disposable version. The one we watched to learn what not to do next time. And then, click. Silence. She was gone. But the line stayed open in my mind. Pilot run. Next time. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't about revenge. This was about refinement. I'd been the experiment. And now? They knew exactly how to improve it. The motel was silent except for the hum of the old fridge and the soft crackle of a dying light bulb. I stared at the phone in my hand like it might melt. Cynthia's words looped again and again. You were the pilot run. It wasn't rage I felt, not even fear. It was clarity. Every failure, every betrayal, every fake smile, they weren't flaws in the plan. They were part of the plan. Observed, measured, evaluated. My loyalty, my silence, my threshold for pain, how much I'd endure before breaking. They hadn't miscalculated. They counted on it. I was never a casualty. I was data. But now? Now I wasn't. Because data doesn't fight back. And I wasn't done yet. I moved fast. I rerouted my identity through 3 shell accounts I'd created years ago for estate tax shelters, names that never got attached to anything real. I booked a flight to Oslo under one. Took a cab to Newark using another. Carried a wallet full of cards that couldn't be traced back to Michael Hale. Michael Hale, the stable one. The provider. The quiet husband. The loyal brother. That man was dead, and I buried him myself. The plane lifted off into gray skies. I stared out the window, hand wrapped around a flash drive hidden in the lining of my coat. On it were documents that had never touched the cloud, never been printed, never emailed. I had one last card left to play. Inside that flash drive was the real project, the black-budget experiment Preston and Natalie had laundered their way into. Project Tether. A synthetic neuromodulator seeded through digital interfaces, the beginning of emotional steering through media consumption. Invisible biofeedback loops. Content that wasn't just addictive, but corrective. Microcoding human behavior over time. Effect. Belief. Decision-making. Not theory. Not science fiction. Real. Tested. And I was the test. The marriage. The betrayal. The pain. All of it designed to chart my inner collapse. And measure how a man breaks. Except I hadn't broken. I'd awakened. I landed in Norway, disappeared into the noise of a city that didn't speak my name. Slept in hostels. Ate in silence. Waited. Then, when the time was right, I met with the one group left who couldn't be bought. A syndicate of private information brokers. Whistleblower exiles. Ex-intelligence. Truth fanatics. Dangerous in their own way, but not corruptible. I handed them the drive. No names. No conditions. Just one message burned onto the first file. Release if I go dark. And then I vanished again. No headlines. No arrests. Just tremors in high places. Quiet firings. Resignations with vague health reasons. Boardroom shakeups at Emergent Therapeutics. A DOJ inquiry that never happened. A fake suicide in Vancouver. An asset freeze in Luxembourg. And silence. Because when you cut deep enough, the system doesn't bleed. It closes the wound and acts like it was never there. It's been 11 months. I live in a port city now. Not saying which. It's quiet. Cold. No one knows my face. No one calls me Michael. I fish in the mornings. I work on boats. I don't read the news. But sometimes I catch a whisper. Natalie's name came up in a podcast once, alleged ties to a political consultancy in Brussels. Gone before the next episode aired. Preston? Still missing. Cynthia? No trace. But I know they're watching. Just like I watched. And if they come again, this time, I won't be caught in their story. I'll be the ending.